Hello, and thank you for joining me for another Anima-Saurus Interviewasaurus. Today I'm very lucky to have with me Bob Jones, who's joined me in his personal garage studio at his own house. So thanks for joining me today, Bob.
You're welcome, Kim. It's nice to see you again.
Just for everyone who's never met you before, because you're such a diverse person around Brisbane, lots of people probably know you here, but for everyone in the rest of Australia, could you just give us a quick idea of who you are and what you do?
Well, pretty much primarily for the last 25 years, I've done a lot of illustration, mostly 2D concept art for games, distance education up north at James Cook, and I did 18 months at a movie company, and I did 8 months at an animation studio in the Fortitude Valley. So I do mostly, pretty much primarily 2D illustration concept, bit of animation, but it comes from all two-dimensional drawing and art, essentially.
Beautiful. 25 years as an artist. That's a really good career. So what got you into
No,
it
well, no, actually,
longer?
it's closer to 32 years because I started in illustration for an advertising agency in the 80s, pre-computer. So it was all very much your cut and paste environment. And when I say cut and paste, I mean scalpel, hot wax, using the actual darkroom camera, pen, ink, and blue pencil so that the camera wouldn't see it.
Ah,
So it's very old school cut and paste. And then it wasn't until in the 88, 89, all the way through till about 94, then it was only 94 that I started working digitally on computer. Yeah.
I like that. That was prior to cut Control C and paste Control V. I love that.
That's where it came from. Cut and paste. Literally, I still have the scalpel and the blue pencil.
Oh wow. Okay. Were you always in and around Brisbane, or did you get to venture off around other places as well when you were starting off?
No, I initially started in North Queensland. I started in Townsville at art college in the mid '80s, and then I managed to secure a job in '88 at an advertising agency that pretty much did all the newspaper art. It was
Oh,
the kind of things the kind of black and white illustrations you would see that a really old newspaper camera could not pick up, that works best with line drawing. So I used to have to start with, well, shoes and jewelry and buildings. I mean, before photographs were able to be edited in Photoshop, sometimes a real estate would send me to a house and I would have to do a black and white drawing of the house, but remove a tree that would be in a photograph. And I'd have to put a lawn in if there was only dirt or concrete. So you would be doing these black and white illustrations, which were the precursor to Photoshop.
oh wow, man, that would
I'd
have
also,
that would have taken some time actually being able to know exactly what to put in and what people wanted. So I can imagine what your brief would have been. It'd be like, we want this, this,
yeah,
this, and this.
yeah, fix that guttering, uh, and that set of stairs, make it look a bit neater, and then they can use that as a promotion for the selling the house. It was very yeah, it was very much like um, both commercial illustration and Photoshop, but yeah, in a traditional sort of sense. Yeah.
Oh, cool. So, how long were you up? Was that like your first role when you kind of graduated? You got into doing that sort of stuff, or was there something that got you
Yes, that
drawing
was
before that?
yeah. It was the very first job. It was in 1988 and then after about 5 years of doing that, both in-house and a bit freelance, then this was still in Townsville up north. So then I managed to get working for the university, and it was the first sit down in front of a computer daily job. And they were a department that specialized in distance education, correspondence courses, and it was digital learning using CD-ROM back then, and it was for rural, remote island communities, Torres Strait and so forth. So
Ah,
it was working with teachers. It was working with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders, and it was it was a very nice working environment because you felt like you were very much in part of the education system. It was really quite wonderful. But that lasted for 7 years, and eventually you went through combination of budgets and changes to the way they put the system together. I thought it's probably best that I to try to move on into something a little bit more entertaining. So I applied for a job in computer games in Brisbane. So we made the big move back in 2000, and we've been here ever since.
so when you came down for the computer games, because 2000 there was quite a lot of different jobs coming in. Where did you come down to? What company did you come down for?
First company was Oren. It was quite a decent size. It had made its fame and money from the game in the 90s called Dark Reign. They were then moving on to trying to create a game based on the King Arthur mythology. And it was like a kind of a third person magic shooter. And they, I came down a commercial illustratory concept artist, I suppose, for this medieval thing. But over time, they put together a lot of little ideas, and then over a period of years, 4 or 5 years, that evolved into the thing they created called Fury, which was a kind of in like a Korean style mythological um, magic brawler. It ended up being,
Oh,
and it was, yeah, but it was really quite it was a lot of fun to work on and a lot of creativity, and it was very interesting to work with so many people from all over the world. They had Korean, Japanese, Scottish, Swedish, Canadians. They had all manner of people from all over the world at this company, and it was really very multicultural and really a very nice place to work.
mhm. It's-
um, I I then moved on to another place after 7.5 years. I moved on to THQ, which then was it was more the world famous one in Spring Hill.
yeah. Ah, just on Oran, it's a bit of a funny one because I would have just passed you because I did an internship in Oran there 1 year. So
Well, yeah, well, depending on the year, I'm sure we would have known each other or met.
probably would have walked past each other at some point.
Yeah, I
uh,
mean, if it's nearly 20 years ago, it's people change, and
yeah,
yeah.
that's it. All right. Yeah, so THQ is most well known for not Crash Bandicoot. Or was it Crash Bandicoot? No.
I actually really don't know. I think they did a lot of work on IP to do with DreamWorks films. They did a lot of work with TV shows with Nickelodeon, the things like the Avatar show,
Yep.
not the film, the Avatar kids television. They did Wii, PlayStation,
Oh,
and that sort of thing.
yeah.
I initially joined when they were going to create a Warhammer 40,000 game, and then um, that was the management changed their tack, and they gave that to another THQ studio, and then we moved on to another game down the we did the Megamind. There was a Megamind
Oh,
film. While the Megamind film was being made, we made the two, three different versions um, in parallel. We would, for example, we would be making, in a sense, the sequel to the film, while they were making the film. They would give us sound bites and concept art, and that was a really wonderful experience working with DreamWorks.
ah. Yeah, because the games are usually not done in house. You know, some people think that the games are always done by the same studio and you get all of their assets and they just plock them in a game. But games are usually done very differently and on a separate tangent completely to what the film is, but they're getting developed at the same time. So,
Yeah, and yeah, you would think there would be a lot of sharing between the actual studio that's creating the film and the game people. But yes, we would have to create mostly everything from scratch because their film resolution characters would be useless to us for a game that would end up on the Wii.
Yeah.
So we might as well make our own and start from scratch because they're much lower poly,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, Polly and Regan, like texture size and everything. When you're doing
Yeah.
pre-rendered stuff, you can just sit there and let the computer churn on it for a couple of hours to get a frame. Whereas when you're
Mm.
working in games, you kind of need it to be real time. And of course, if you go back a few generations, a few game generations, stuff constraints were a lot more than what they were now.
Oh, yes.
So
Very low. It
yeah,
wouldn't hold up today, but it would on large screens. But it would still. It was a lot of fun, and it was nice working in collaboration because we used to get all their concept art that I'm sure nobody else was going to see, and they enjoyed what we did, and we enjoyed what they did. It was a wonderful
working.
collaboration, I thought.
Yeah, working relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
So that gets you THQ, and so where after THQ? How long were you there for?
4.5 years, and then they, due to the global financial crisis in 2011, they actually shut down the entire Brisbane studio.
Yeah,
It was quite a lot of people, both in Brisbane and Melbourne, that all were made redundant. We were given a redundancy package and see you later. So I quickly reached out to the other small studio at the time that was doing quite well, Half Brick.
yeah,
And Half Brick were only then just starting to become world famous for their Fruit Ninja, and that was a nice stepping stone. I jumped on board and helped them primarily flesh out their entire Fruit Ninja universe, along with one of the other artists from concept artists from THQ, Rod Wong. And between the pair of us, it was like we just kickstarted ourselves a mini THQ, and 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 help them sort of flesh out and develop their whole IP for Fruit Ninja. It was a really nice jump sideways.
yeah, yeah. Because there's not that many people who haven't played it, and Fruit Ninja was one of the first games that actually got installed on a phone. To start off with as well, it was like there to start off. Everyone got to play it. It was a huge success story. So yeah, getting to work on that and seeing so many people play it must be a real bit of a buzz to go. Oh, this is it's kind of a bit of a unique gem.
Yeah, I remember at one stage there, I was trying to explain to my father how because he knew that I had done working for newspapers, and I explained to him, when you work in a place like that and you've got the audiences, the newspaper readers, which could be 20 or 30,000 people, so they're seeing your work, and then you work in another place where it's seen by maybe a couple of people, a couple of 100,000 here and a couple of 100,000 there, gamers on PlayStation and so forth. And then I explained to him, this new company I'm working on is making a game, and if I do a little icon, that little tiny thing, and he said, oh yes, he said, that little tiny thing is on 500 million people's phones. And he could barely grasp the fact that it was so world famous and popular. It's a different kind of distribution when it's on a phone.
Yeah, I just that in itself is a real interesting, because physiologically, as humans, we can't really concept the scope of reach. Like we're not really wired to be able to actually concept that. We can come up with the numbers and go, okay, cool, yeah, mathematically it looks like that. But to actually sit down and go, how much reach does some of the stuff that we do actually have? That's when it's really quite
well. We were told at one point there that the numbers had reached the point where 1 in 7 people in the world either knew of or had played Fruit Ninja.
Ooh, 1 in.
So that's a mind-boggling number of people.
Yeah, yeah. And when you were doing it, like when you were drawing it, you weren't thinking about that sort of stuff.
No. Well, I suppose in some ways you are, because when you know something's famous everywhere, it really makes you lift your game as an artist, because that's going to be seen by so many people. It makes you really lift the quality level.
Yeah.
It sort of is a little bit scary and humbling, because wow, somebody's going to look at that in every corner of the world. It sort of was a little bit scary at times, but I suppose that's in some ways a good thing. It really makes you just take it up to another level and another level again.
Yeah, yeah, but you didn't feel like there wasn't the pressure for that quality wasn't actually put on you as the artist to say, all right, you need to be hitting these quality deadlines, otherwise, this is not going to be a success. Did you kind of get any
No,
of that pressure?
no. It was quite a comfortable, quiet, um, unassuming company. They didn't have an internal they didn't really have an internal quality bar as high as the quality bar I had in my head, which is pretty much I was just operating at my own. I suppose I've got to make this as good as I can.
Yeah, yeah. Well, when people look at Fruit Ninja specifically, it's not a complex game. So I know
No,
there's a lot of, I've talked to people before who said, oh, you could have just whipped it up over a weekend. But that particular game has had so much work done on it and developed on it. How long were you sort of working on Fruit Ninja?
well, there were so many iterations and there's so many connections to it. For example, there was the fleshing out the world. They wanted to make something that had its own little mini DreamWorks universe. They wanted to expand, where did the characters come from? What other people live in this world? What did the country look like? Why are they cutting fruit? What did the buildings look? All the mythology behind it. So part of the experiences of working in other games where you've got stories, pre-existing stories, like when you work on with DreamWorks, they've got a story.
Yeah.
You are just fitting your characters into their story or their world, their universe. Whereas the entire Fruit Ninja didn't have a universe. And so that's why it was so fun for people like Rod and myself to really sit and flesh out all the ideas for something that didn't exist. And then because they would iterate and make other versions of Fruit Ninja, it kind of just, we would try and put out some of that stuff in the design of the dojo, for example, or the world, or if you turned it around, if it was in a virtual reality game like that, like the VR one they put out for the Sony.
Yep.
What does the ground look like? I mean, when you look down, what does the swords look like? And then these characters, how do we promote it? So we did a lot of promotional stuff that fleshed out stuff that actually wasn't in the game. And that's more fun, I think.
Yeah, that's where your storytelling comes in to go, okay, there was a lot
Yeah.
of story around the idea of just
No,
hacking fruit.
no. I feel like I'm more primarily a type of storyteller,
Yeah.
but I just create stories in a visual form.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess that comes down to you being as an artist. That's sort of what you do. You've come from having to portray advertising through, your art to say, this is a story of going back to a house. It's like, this is what the house looks like, and this is what it could look like, and you're trying to sell it as it is, which is a story in itself. So,
Yeah,
moving on from that, you're just gone into telling different stories.
yeah.
Yep.
It also helps being a huge fan of movies and comic books, and because comic books are pure visual, they rely on your imagination to even take it further than, I mean, you're listening to what the characters sound like in your head. You're having to, comic books are just a storyboard for a movie that your mind puts together. Um, Playing, for example, Dungeons and Dragons in the 90s, you end up telling stories, and the stories create themselves through the interactions that you have with your fellow players. And it's a lot of fun telling those stories afterwards, going, wow, what did we do? How did we get out of that one?
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's being a storyteller visually, I find is even more, almost as much fun as doing art
Yeah.
in itself.
Well, how long were you at Half Brick for then?
Again, that was another one, 6.5 years there, working on just about everything. Fruit Ninja, Jetpack Joyride. So yeah, things all like for everything from Fruit Ninja, Jetpack Joyride, Dan the Man. They had a thing called Half Brick Friday where you would they would make all these little prototype games. So you would work on, over a period of a few years, you'd work on about a dozen of those, and there'd be a lot of creativity and a lot of um, flexibility, and you jump on different game teams depending on how much help they needed. And then, so after 6.5 years, the company had some structure changes, and they made another 27 of us were kind of made redundant one week, and again we all had to find new jobs,
Find something else to do.
which is
Yeah.
so that's where it leads up to where you and I met, in that it was about a couple of months later, after reaching out to the ladies from Like a Photon, which I saw their article in the newspaper, and it intrigued me because they wanted to kickstart a studio, and they were sitting there holding a Muppet, and I mean that just got me. So I thought, oh, I'm gonna have to reach out to them. Didn't even know they were looking for an artist, a concept artist. And I got an interview, and I came in, and I just spent a day. I spent a day with Ricardo and the art director, and I spent a day just playing around with their Kerry possum.
Oh,
And then a couple of weeks later, I got the job offer, and that's where the studio moved forwards, and we eventually met.
yep. Yeah. Ended up
Yeah.
making a movie. How about that?
Yes. Yeah.
But I mean, it's one of the, like, we'll get back through this as well, but one of the interesting things with Brisbane, you've been able to keep yourself actually grounded in the city. A lot of people, like a lot of artists from like what I sort of do, that they're in and they're out and they're following the work and they're chasing it around the country. So it's really cool to hear of someone who's been able to find themselves grounded inside Brisbane, but not have to run out of Brisbane. So
I have been extremely lucky.
Yep.
I have been, I would say, more blessed than the average commercial artist,
yeah,
than pretty much anyone I know. I've had, a handful of jobs in 20 years, and they've all felt like they were very worthwhile. And you learn something new in the next one that you didn't from the previous. And I really don't want to move town.
Yep.
I don't know what I would do if I suddenly had nothing, but it is difficult hanging on to jobs at times, but I have been very, very fortunate, and I'm hoping that my luck continues. Yeah.
Do you ever, like, looking at it from your perspective as a commercial 2D artist, do you get a sense of the industry while you're in it? Do you kind of feel, talking to people around you, do you kind of get a sense of the ups and downs of the industry?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You get to know, because even though people think Brisbane's a big city, and if you're from Melbourne or Sydney, they think it's a small town by comparison. And in this industry, it is a small town, because you end up literally working with some people around about 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
I'm now at Gameloft. Gameloft has got now people from Half Brick. It's got people from THQ, people from Oran that I've worked with over the last 20 years, because when they move on, you eventually run into each other again. Even at the Pony Up movie studio, I worked with Nathan Geppert, who we worked together with at THQ. It is a very small town. Everybody talks to each other often, and it has quite a community in that way, that you get to hear of something that might intrigue you or save your career. And you also get all the stories of who to work for, who not to work for. Be careful, this place might shut down in 6 months. This place might have a lot going for you.
Yep.
It's quite a community, and you keep in touch with people, and you can hear enough stories to really be quite helpful.
So how do you feel like with your ear to the ground? How do you feel about the position now that Brisbane has gone through, like with the rest of the world? We haven't really had to lock down as such, but we've been able to keep working, remotely and everything. How do you feel the industry around Brisbane is actually handling, the pandemic that everyone else is going through?
Oh, well, I mean, working digitally from home in almost you hear every studio. Half Brick's doing it. Um, the the whole of Gameloft have got, like, I'm working from home today.
Mm.
I work from home on Wednesday. We're only in the office every, on off 2 or 3 days a week. Um, Before that, I was at Liquid Animation. The whole team were working from home then. It's it's just the nature of people. If you're working digitally now, I think it's going to be the way future, that if there's way more the ability to work from home now.
Mm.
Um, I personally haven't really, and nobody I know has really, really suffered at all from the pandemic. And that's just the nature of this kind of industry. I think if you've got internet and a computer, then you just keep going.
Yeah. Oh,
You have your Zoom meetings, you have your schedules, and you have your communication, and it's yeah, that's how you can move forwards. I have met for example, two friends of mine. They're both chefs. One's a chef at the Stanford Plaza in the city, and the other's a chef working at South Bank. Well, one's only just gone back to work over the last couple of weeks, and the other one hasn't worked for over 6 months, and
mm.
both on the JobKeeper
Yeah.
program. If it had gone on for any longer, then they don't know what they would have done. It was just going to be quite, I wouldn't say devastating, but it would have been really difficult
Yep.
for them.
Yeah, that's it. Like as an industry as a whole, like artists, like digital artists, have been able to adapt quite effectively compared to a lot of other industries because we've been putting the infrastructure into place for a long time. The internet, computers being able to handle the software that we're actually using, or even just being able to communicate with people more efficiently. It's not just a phone call anymore or anything like that, or a message. You can actually sit down and talk and share screens and talk about the ideas that you're actually doing as well. I can see that that's going to be happen more and more. Do you think that the skills of an artist are going to have to change as well to keep up with that?
I think they already have. I
Yeah.
think it's already happened organically. I mean, I don't think I have every young person who's studying art is doing it all digitally.
Hmm.
I mean, they're all working on computer. They've all got internet. They've all got laptops. They've got phones. Everybody who works digitally now that I know. It doesn't even matter if they could be on the other side of the world, and they can still work. I mean, Half Brick had a studio that they collaborated with, in that were each of the people in the team were in a different house in Spain, and even their team in Spain weren't, together. They get together once a month in the
Oh.
same room. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's the nature of so many artists and people now that they just don't have to even go into an office.
Yeah, it's going to be. I find that for me, that's very interesting to see how like larger, mid-size, small to mid-size productions are then going to be going towards that. So I'm actually finding, as a new artist, trying to find someone to work with. I think that's going to form both a it's going to give new artists opportunities because they don't have to physically be in a location, but actually getting in on a team that's going to be doing good work. I think that's going to be a lot harder because you're only, if you're working remotely, you're really going to want to work with people or you've worked with before who can do stuff. So actually getting your skills up in a studio environment, because that was my big thing when I started. I got to sit in a studio with artists who knew what they were doing. It's like you could actually pick off their
Yes,
brain and learn so much more. That particular,
absolutely. Working in a studio environment is always, oh, so much better than, because you hit a trouble or hit a problem, you just go, and then you ask them,
and yeah,
like the technical artist or the animator, or the lead artist, it's just turn around and quickly chat, 5 words, you've got your answer. And it happens with inspiration. Some of the people that we work with at THQ were some of the most inspirational artists in my team. And just being able to turn around and watch their skill level, their technique, their speed every day, it was inspiring. And you learn faster, more organically. Absolutely. When you're in the company of other people in a creative space, it is so much better. It is difficult for people to work from home, not impossible, and it's not something they would choose to do. But yeah,
Yep.
There's certainly definitely more choice anyway.
Yeah. Since you did come from an advertising background and then into games, how did you find moving then into like feature films once you hit Like a Photon? Was there much of a change for you, or was it very similar to just arting the way you art?
Yeah, it was surprising, actually.
Yeah?
It's a very surprisingly simple, creative storytelling, linear driven process. Games are all over the shop in that you can it's linear to a point, but it's also a story. It has its own story sometimes. But sometimes they just, like, for example, Harperick, the games had no story. It was just whatever, move in, come up with some ideas, create it, make this icon, make this interface, make this button, draw this picture for a promo thing. Then Pony Up was very much a story-driven linear thing that when you got the script, you went, okay, so then you started picturing all the different ways that they would tell the same story visually in different angles. It became it was very organic, but it was subtly different, and it was extremely enjoyable.
Excellent. And is that then similar with Gameloft now? You've gone back to being in the game environment where you can have more input into the way things are going, or?
Oh, well, see, now this is another thing where you go to another place and they've already got, it's not a story, but it is a story. It's and for example, you're using slightly different techniques, slightly different tools. When I was at Pony Up, I was drawing in super high resolution, and I was creating art that was basically just character ideas and designs, and then handing them over to the modeler. That was just fantastic. In this environment, my role is just pixels. I do little pixel stuff to make it look retro. And it's extremely satisfying, but it's a completely different resolution, a completely different workflow, but I'm still working with someone else's work. I get to be creative, but within really tiny parameters. And that's where it's same but different. And every place is the same. Everything's like that. Yep. Working at Liquid, working in collaboration with the Disney people, that was a different thing again. They had there was a lot more pressure on pumping out the quantity according to the deadline, and then when it was done, you would get paid. They would pay the whole company when they delivered. And that's where you have these subtly different milestones and processes, but the at the bottom is just me drawing, and I've been very fortunate that doesn't change much.
Excellent. Yeah, you get to enjoy a career that's I guess you get to live your dream of actually just drawing and creating what you see in your mind, which is beautiful.
Yeah. There's technical glitches. There's problems that you might have that you can quickly ask someone and overcome. But generally, I've been very fortunate to just do more of the very thing that I love and less of the things that I hate.
I'd like to thank Bob very much for coming in and joining your story. So thanks, Bob. Yay. For everyone who does enjoy these interviews, please make sure you subscribe. Leave us a comment below. If there's anyone you'd like me to find and talk about or talk to, leave me comments. But until the next time when I meet you on another interview, I'll like to say all bye-bye.
See ya.